Okay, folks, we are coming back for our last session here, centered particularly around climate change. And I'll hand it off to Amy to intro our session and we'll dive right in.
Yep, as we think about climate change here, the majority of Americans are now agreeing that climate change is a major threat and that it's starting to have impacts, but we're still not seeing them willing to take action. So only about a third of Americans are behind serious action. So talking about it can help, and motivating students to action, who are the ones most prone to it, is great. So I'm excited to kick off our session here. And we're starting with Sean McCanty.
Thanks, Amy. Let me share my screen. Is that working?
Working.
You can see it.
Perfect. All right. So I'm just going to kind of run through a lot of the things that the Neponset River Watershed Association has been doing and is planning to do in the estuary, and then we can kind of really get into the details in the breakout session. But just to kind of give a little bit of a place setting. So the Neponset Estuary comes in from Boston Harbor, all the way up the Neponset River to the Baker Dam in Lower Mills, Dorchester, and Milton. And it has about 600 acres of salt marsh, as well as a number of public parks and a lot of public access, and spreads across 3 different municipalities, Boston, Quincy, and Milton. It's also, most of the land is owned by DCR, so it kind of presents an interesting puzzle of jurisdictional concern. And it is all designated as an area of critical environmental concern, which also places some restrictions on the way we interact with it. So what we've started to do is really start with the community, put the community first and center that conversation. So we've started a Climate Community Advisory Council. And this is really a group of groups. It's not necessarily public engagement as much. We're trying to reach out to groups that are already working in this area. So low-income housing groups, neighborhood associations, those that provide kind of job training. And even if their mission isn't climate, we're trying to get them involved to get a sense of what they're hearing from their community, really working that in. So we've had 2 meetings so far. We're hoping to have more and really kind of roll this forward and create a perpetual conversation around climate as we talk about very specific projects and specific interventions. The kind of next step, they're getting into the science side. So we've got some state funds this fiscal year to look at what we call the state of the estuary, really assessing salt marsh health. We're at the moment gearing up to get our contractors kind of lined up, but this will basically assess all the existing salt marsh parcels for vegetation cover, elevation, the damage we've done to them over the last 200, 300 years by building the city of Boston, Quincy on top of it, and really kind of collecting that baseline data, where they are right now, so we know where they're going in terms of climate change. And then the kind of adding on to that, we want to tack onto the climate modeling that already exists and develop it further. So we've got some funding from National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to improve the coastal flood model specifically for the Neponset Estuary, really map out salt marsh migration, and then provide a kind of first step plan for how to address climate mitigation and community resilience. And so this is going to be informed by the data collected beforehand, but this might be salt marsh restoration, it might be clearing up upland areas for marsh movement, or it might be kind of moving things away from that waterfront. Real quick, in terms of future work, as I said, we're going to keep that community engagement rolling. We're also hoping to develop a cross-municipal team for coordination, because Boston, Quincy, and Milton don't work together quite as much as we might hope they would. And then obviously we also want to think about dam removal, so the Baker Dam and Lower Mills, which separates the fresh water from the salt water in our estuary. And that is it.
Thank you, Sean. Do we have Jean and Skye?
Hello. Let me just get my screen. Alrighty. Skye and I are from Devine Native Plantings, where we design and install native plant gardens and coach adults and youth how to do so. We also, for 6 weeks of the summer, run Biodiversity Builders, where high school students from Cambridge, Arlington, and Belmont earn a paycheck while they develop agency, making local impact in the environment. They learn how to install native plants, remove invasive plants, run a business selling native plants, observing nature, tracking nature, and advocating for nature-based solutions to climate change. So why is this here? Well, let's start with the basics. Plants create the basic elements of organisms that we all need to live: oxygen, food, and habitat. This is a picture of a habitat that's typical of our region, and people think this is far away. They forget about it. This is in our area and should happen in our area as a way to be a nature-based solution to climate change. Where do native plants fit in? They are the fuel to the engine of that ecosystem. Native plants have evolved in specific locations alongside native pollinators and the wildlife that depend upon them. I need to shrink my face here. And they have a codependent. Native plants and native pollinators have a codependent relationship. Native plants need native pollinators for procreation. Here's examples of how they attract their pollinators. Basic stuff, you probably know that. Non-native plants are not attracting the pollinators. Pollinators need native plants for food, primarily for their young. So the pollen serves as the food for the bee. A specialist bee needs specialist pollen for their nests. Nectar is energy for our pollinators. And this is a picture of a host plant, which is essential food for Lepidoptera. And Lepidoptera becomes food for our birds and bees. All about the food chain. You can't have a robust ecosystem unless you have a robust food chain. And here we have an example of the caterpillar that may not become the butterfly because it is essential food for baby birds. And this bird may not see it to the end if this hawk is a little bit hungry. You know this relationship, but you multiply that out and you have a biodiverse ecosystem. And this is what a robust local biodiverse ecosystem would look like. The problem is we are losing our insects and creatures. The center will not hold. Species are declining at a rapid rate. And if biodiversity is frayed, we lose our ability to be resilient in the face of climate change. So native plants are the essential food for pollinators, but they also perform other functions. These deep roots can sequester carbon and absorb rainwater. I can't see my slides. I have an example of this sequestering carbon. I lost a tree in front of my yard that was 70 years old, and had I stuck around a little bit longer, it was producing 125 tons of oxygen, which allows 135,000 people to breathe for one day. It stores 47 tons of carbon, equal to 247 miles traveled in a commercial plane, 7,000 gallons of water evaporation, equivalent to 5 air conditioners working for 1,300 hours. I don't have that anymore in front of my yard.
30 seconds left, Jean.
Okay, so I'm at the last slide. Anyway, if you go to manage stormwater, stormwater management and ecosystem restoration go hand in hand. This is an example of a filtration system that's attracting butterflies and supporting the food web. This is an example of reducing the heat in heat islands by planting trees, native trees, perfect for the result. And look at that, you achieve beauty, but native plants are a functional solution to many of our problems, and they also provide a beautiful moment. Thank you for the opportunity. True green and green infrastructure is planting natives. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Next up, we have Danny Badger.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Danny Badger with MIT Sea Grant, the Marine Extension Specialist focused on workforce development and aquaculture, which is the farming of aquatic life. I'll do a quick crash course, as most people don't seem to really know what aquaculture is all about, but we see a tremendous amount of opportunity as it is the world's fastest growing food production sector, recently catching up with wild capture fisheries that plateaued back in the 90s. And while that plateaued, we're able to get more and more biomass out of aquaculture, hoping that can help feed a growing population. In this state, we grow mostly shellfish, a little bit of seaweed, at least in our marine settings. On land, we do grow some finfish like barramundi and trout. But it is a large part of our blue economy, and it is continuing to grow. But because we are mostly growing shellfish and seaweed in the marine setting, it is quite sustainable. You do not feed those critters as they grow, so you're not catching something else to feed it. You are not providing fresh water. You are not giving fertilizer into the system. As they grow, they provide habitat for other critters, and they mitigate nutrient pollution, as well as reducing some local climate change impacts as they're growing. So a lot of benefits, but there's a fair number of vulnerabilities too. One of the big ones being a lack of diversification. In terms of species, 95% of what we grow are oysters. Most of them are sold to the half-shell market at restaurants right along the coast, which that lack of market reach and penetration means we're rather vulnerable to disruptions like COVID. Also, as you go inland a few miles, you look at a seafood market, you rarely encounter something showcasing, hey, this is a Massachusetts grown product, which in turn limits the visibility to those communities that this could potentially be a career path that is just down the road. So it's very much out of sight, out of mind. We're also hoping that we're looking to address a lot of threats through diversification, specifically things like shifts in growing conditions that we're going to see, as we are seeing with climate change. And as we consider whether we could or should expand aquaculture, there's a big barrier is social license, as a lot of other stakeholders don't necessarily understand the relative benefits and costs of the various forms of aquaculture. So we really need to improve that element of our general understanding. And that's where all of you can come in. Help us expand the visibility, help us expand the understanding of the opportunities, both environmentally and economically, that aquaculture can provide as we produce a climate resilient local food industry. To that end, we have funding to launch a new internship program to allow people to be paid as they learn whether or not this field is for them. And that includes some wraparound services like some housing support, which makes me say, if you have any cheap housing options available, especially on the Cape, let us know, we're on the hunt. And the applications for this program are due February 25th. It's for 18 and up. We are specifically aiming to reach underrepresented communities. And really, it's not geared for college students. It's more for young adults who chose not to go to college for a variety of reasons. And I'm out of time. So thank you very much, and I'll look forward to chatting with you later.
Thank you, Danny. Next we have Pallavi Mande.
617-222-1223. Thank you and have a great day.
Hi all, just having some difficulty starting my video. So, oh, there you go. Sorry about that. I muted myself and put myself off video to preserve bandwidth, and then I couldn't do it. All right, sorry about that. So I'll keep this really brief. Can everybody see my screen? Yes, perfect. So yes, my name is Pallavi Mande, and I'm the Director of Climate Resilient Design at BSC Group. I just wanted to talk a little bit about, per second, what we do as part of the group that I lead, and how the work is related not only to what we are seeing around us in New England for climate resilience or need for climate resilience,
but how our state is working to provide resources to communities, especially the most vulnerable communities, to do this work and build infrastructure. And one of my sort of passion aspect around this is to really focus on working with urban and environmental justice communities who are bearing the brunt the most in building some resilience, either from an infrastructure standpoint or even kind of providing resources to community-based organizations to help do this work. So I will keep this short. You can read what's on the slide, but that just describes where my program sits within the company. As I mentioned before, this is part of what we do in terms of assessing vulnerability and impacts, looking at statewide areas, but also urban communities that are the most impacted, especially the Boston metro area being on the coast. And then actually bringing communities on for building resilience. What we've realized over time is how great we might be at designing infrastructure or, providing seawall retrofits. Nothing really matters if you don't educate the residents and bring them into helping build that resilience. So without the people, this work is very, in some ways superficial, but also doesn't make meaning for communities that we are doing this work for. So you all know this, so I'm not going to spend any time, but climate resilience is a New England-wide phenomena, and there are different programs at different states that are looking to help communities build resilience. In Massachusetts, we are very fortunate to have the state take the lead. It has not always been the case, but for the last, I would say, decade plus, we are really seeing some investment in the most vulnerable communities around the state. I don't have to share too much in terms of this map. You all are familiar with where our environmental justice communities reside and why they need to be our focus for this work. Again, this is a map that most of you have probably seen, but it just illustrates how much, being on the Boston metro area on the coast makes it for very difficult and challenging conversations. Obviously, we are not talking about retreat just as yet, but what can we do to not have communities have to make the choice of moving somewhere else? So that's kind of the mandate that I work with in my department. And as I said, involving the communities in terms of, both education, but also empowering them to have a voice in advocating for these kinds of strategies and planning. Actually, getting the kids down and dirty, actually building solutions that we feel once we have kids kind of take this kind of work on, they are the best advocates that you can find. So my goal always is to, maybe do some amount of training with the kids and have them advocate for this work moving forward. And we also, as a company, are invested in, training the youth corps that we work with. Which is another partner of ours doing this work, has been really great about getting us to meet with communities and workforce development that we can invest in at various stages of education. So this has been a great experience, kind of building capacity within educational institutions, as well as community-based youth programs to teach them about
Pallavi,
this.
we're at time.
All right, so I'll just keep it short. And that's just thank you for your time. Sorry about the late
Fine.
start.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Ellie, Evan, and Olivia from National Parks of Boston.
Hey there. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, you're just a little quiet.
Oh, okay. I'll try to speak up a little bit. Yeah, so today myself and my coworkers are going to be talking about an activity we made regarding climate haikus. So just a quick intro about us. We are the National Parks of Boston Climate Conservation Corps, and there's 5 of us that make up this group, and 3 of us are going to be speaking today. So we are addressing climate change through 4 major pillars: understanding, mitigation, adaptation, and communication, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So our activity addresses some emotions that I'm sure all of us have experienced regarding climate change. So one being climate anxiety, lots of reasons to be worried and scared. So people have certainly been experiencing feelings of distress regarding climate change, but on the other hand, there's lots of reasons to be hopeful. So our activity kind of addresses those dueling emotions.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Evan. I'm also a Climate Conservation Corps crew member. And yeah, we thought that we could help people processing these complicated feelings about climate change through writing haikus. So if you don't know what a haiku is, it is a form of Japanese poetry. It originated in the 17th century, and it is made of short lines, and each line has to have a specific number of syllables. And it's an expression of nature, and especially changing nature. So traditionally, haikus were written about seasons as a form of changing nature. And we thought that we could modernize this concept, make it more relevant to current times by having people writing haikus about climate change as a form of changing nature. And so on the right, you can see the rules for writing a haiku. There are 3 lines. Lines 1 and 3 have 5 syllables. Line 2 has 7. And here's an example of a haiku written by a famous haikuist. And I underline the syllables so you can see that it matches up with the rules. It goes, an old silent pond. A frog jumps into the pond. Splash, silence again.
So this activity started as a tabling activity. Our goal was to just encourage discussion about those complicated feelings related to climate change. And so we had 2 prompts, climate anxiety and climate hope. And we had posters for each prompt. The anxiety was displayed as a cloud, and we had visitors write their haikus on raindrops. And then the climate hope was a tree, and visitors wrote their haikus on leaves, apples, and flowers. And we really just wanted people to get thinking about how climate change makes them feel, whether it's stressed, overwhelmed, or any sort of feelings of hope. And then we also provided additional resources such as a word bank and some climate change facts. Since then, we've also updated this activity and created climate haiku activity sheets. And we do, at the top, we have an explanation of how to fill out this sheet. And then we provide information on what a haiku is in the word bank. And we really just want to encourage people to get thinking about what gives them climate anxiety, but also hopefully get them thinking of reasons to be optimistic as well. So we we'll have both these activities with us when the in-person portion of this workshop comes around. But if you have any more questions about our group or this activity, we hope you join our breakout session. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope we can put those sheets up on the Stone Living Lab website. That would be great. And our final speaker is Kim Starbuck.
All right, thanks. Hi, everyone. Let me just share my presentation. All right, great. So I am going to be talking about a project that we've had going on now for a few years, and we talked briefly about this project at the last educators workshop. It's called Cool Science. It's a project where kids are generally teaching adults about climate resilience through art. And Lois touched on this project a little bit, and I'm going to be talking about a different aspect. I'm a senior research associate at the Urban Harbors Institute at UMass Boston, and also work closely with the School for the Environment. And below here at the bottom, you can see all of the different partners that are part of this project. Wide range of projects in Massachusetts and then in the Midwest as well. Okay, so what is Cool Science? It's a collaboration that was funded by the National Science Foundation. It's been going on since 2019. And generally, it's the big concept behind it is that it's an art competition for students K through 12 that is meant to foster learning about climate science and extreme weather. So each year we have 3 challenge questions that we propose to students, and students develop artwork based on those challenge questions. And right here is an example in the middle of a piece of artwork that then the winners end up going up on buses in both Massachusetts and the Midwest. And the point behind this is to really teach adults about climate resilience. So here you can see students are talking about, changing the world, and their specific challenge question they responded to was how our lives will change as weather becomes more severe. So it's meant for adults to kind of look at this poster and then learn something from it while they're on the buses. Here is an example of a piece of artwork that was up on a bus. I believe this was last year, and the student that created that artwork. And so we have the yearly art competition to create those pieces of art that go on the buses. And then we also have some community outreach projects. One being the one that Lois was talking about, the mural at the Umana Academy, and you can see a picture of it down on the bottom. And then we also had another project where we developed birdhouses with students that were 4th and 5th grade from the Haley Pilot School in Roslindale. And the point of these birdhouses was to develop houses that are resilient to extreme weather. So students created designs of birdhouses that then could withstand things like heavy winds, heavy rain, a lot of heat. And those birdhouses are going to be going up at Mass Audubon. And the big thing that I wanted to briefly talk about here is just that we have a Cool Science National Showcase conference coming up, April 25th through 26th at UMass Boston. And right now, all of you guys could apply to be presenters there or also be attendees there. The point behind this conference is to bring together people who are thinking about combining art and science in a way to aid kids to teach adults. And really, we want to kind of promote the idea of cool science and how students can teach adults about climate science, and then also just bring together people that are doing projects on art and science and youth. Here, the point is to create an environment for sharing similar projects. And you can see over on the left is our call for presenters. So if you would like a travel stipend, you could apply by March 1st, and you'd be considered for a travel stipend to come to Boston for that time. And so that would be specifically for presenters. And then we're also looking for attendees to come to the conference as well. So you can Google us, like us, follow us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. That's our website. And basically, we'd love to have you guys apply to be part of the conference. And that's all. So that QR code you can scan to go to our website and find the application and more information about the conference.
Thank you so much for spending your morning with us. To all of our attendees and all of our speakers who took the time to talk and share their programs today, we want to thank you.